to the show today and coming to visit us. I want to introduce our two members here. We actually have Priscilla Agoncillo, and she's the president of the CBDIA, CBD Industry Association. And then we also have Dr. Joseph Rosado, who is a member and also does our educational certification courses. So we're just gonna have, this is gonna be very casual. We'll just do some questions and answers and tell you, have a general conversation on what is going on in the industry, where we see it headed, where we think that, there is a need for more focus, and also, how CBD companies can grow. So let's start off with, let's see, let's give a little bit of background about who we are and what we do. Do you want me to do that? Do you want to go ahead?
What about you?
Okay.
What
about you? Start with you.
Okay. Yeah, well, I am acting director of Cannabinoid Industry Association. I've actually been in the cannabis industry for almost 10 years now. I started in cannabis, owned 3 dispensaries in Oregon, owned a grow facility in Oregon as well. Moved over to Denver, Colorado, partnered out there with another grow facility, and have been consulting quite a bit. So been in the industry for a while, and moved over to hemp and CBD and cannabis, and there's so much overflow of just the industry as a whole, and touching base on every sector that it's just incredibly exciting. And so here we are. We formed the CBD Industry Association. Celeste Moran is actually the founder. And we actually came about because we all have been, everybody that started the association, the founding members, have been in the cannabis industry for more than 10 years. So we have some OGs. And we really saw a need to form an association that was inclusive, because we do see that there are associations for farmers, associations for retailers, associations for local, regional, but we wanted to include everybody that touches on the industry, and that includes people that are in banking, people that are in insurance, people that are even just curious about the industry that want to know more. And so we decided to create Cannabinoid Industry Association to bring everybody together as an industry to be a viable industry. And I think Priscilla might also have some additional words.
Up so I don't have to lean forward. My name is Priscilla, and I am the current president for the Cannabinoid Industry Association. Really, really happy to be here. I want to commend everyone for also making it out, because this has been such a crazy year. I'm glad that we're all brave enough to be here. But the industry has grown so much. A little bit about my background. I've been in the industry coming around 15 years, maybe a little bit more, but 15 years into the industry. I started in California as an advocate. I have a company called Original Breeders League. We're an award-winning genetics farm in California. And from there, I've been able to work around the world in the pharmaceutical space, helping to bridge different gaps within the pharmaceutical and cannabinoid space. And to touch on a little bit of what Graciela has said, the great thing about this association is that it's cannabinoids. That includes I think now we're up to a little over 400 different identified cannabinoids. I think it's exactly at 440, but over 400 different identified cannabinoids that were already found in the plant. So we are just getting started. It's quite amazing, and we have no idea yet. We have an inclination, an idea of what these cannabinoids can do based off of what we've already seen with just 2 cannabinoids. That's CBD and THC. So imagine as we unlock the rest of the science, as we get to apply different great minds such as this doctor here and other types of therapies and other types of technology that's coming online or has been already existing in other medical areas and other medical fields, what we're able to unlock and use this medicine as it really obviously works within our body chemistry. So I'm really, again, happy to be here today, and I'll pass this off to the good doctor here so he could give a little bit about his background.
Well, my background, I took the long road to become a doctor. I started as a certified nurse's aide at the age of 16, then became an EMT, then an EMT paramedic, then a cath lab technician, then a chiropractor, then I went to medical school. And then in medical school, or after medical school, I had all this track record on how to take care of people, but I didn't know how to run a freaking business. So then I got an MBA in healthcare management.
Wow.
Which made me the friend and the enemy of my colleagues. The friend because I defended them, but the enemy because I had sold my soul to the business, to the business guys, to the administrators. It's like, yeah, but if I'm not there, you're going to get screwed 100% of the time. Now you're going to get screwed maybe 20, 25% of the time. Big difference. And as far as my involvement in cannabis, I am one of the few physicians that actually learned about the endocannabinoid system in medical. A brief section in the pharmacology course or class, we touched on the endocannabinoid system and the receptors, and the cannabinoid receptors. And she spent all of 5 minutes on that and about 15 minutes on the evils of cannabis. Me being what they call in Spanish un cucarachero. Cucaracha is a roach. And so you know how roaches like to go into the corners and they're delving into different places? Well, that's how I am when I study. I want to know every little thing. So I went home and read Goodman and Gilman, which is the pharmacological Bible. And I looked up cannabis. And in there it said that it is not physiologically dependent, but psychologically dependent. And opiates and antidepressants that all create a certain level of tolerance and dependence, and you have to increase the dose to get the same effect. With cannabis, it doesn't work that way. So I put it in the back of my head and said, okay, it's a tool in my toolbox for future reference. Fast forward to 2010, when medical cannabis became legal in Arizona, one of my best friends, where I was practicing chiropractic, calls me up and says, hey, I got property, we're gonna start growing, we're going to get into the industry. I need a physician to be my medical director. Sign me up, except for one little thing. We didn't calculate on his wife stepping in and saying, no, we're not going to do that, because his son and my daughters were 14 at the time. And she's like, we're teaching our kids to abstain from drugs, and here we're going to get involved in cannabis. I called her up. I'm like, Jan, this is Dr. Rosado and Dr. Dearth promoting cannabis, not Joe and Don selling weed in the corner. Didn't fly, so I had to table it until 2014, when in Florida we actually began a program to decriminalize cannabis. I was on the Bureau of Speakers, and I was advocating way before I was recommending, because we didn't have any products until 2016. So I advocated for 2.5 years before we actually had any product. And as a result of that, in my advocacy work, I was the first in the greater Central Florida area to recommend cannabis to an adult with a stage 3 brain tumor, and the first in the state to recommend to a 15-year-old that had a stage 4 head and neck tumor, which is why I wear bow ties in honor of him, because his brand was a bow tie and hats. And so whenever I speak on or talk about cannabis, I always wear a bow tie in honor of the first pediatric patient who was 15 years old, who was my first pediatric patient and the first in the state to get the medicine that gave him a better quality of life. Because when he came to me, he was on hospice, and connected to a morphine pump and getting 16 milligrams of morphine. 1 month after being on cannabis, we dropped his dose to 8 milligrams, and he was no longer using the immediate pain relief, the morphine bolus, because the cannabis was working. One Wednesday evening, I'm watching Empire on TV, and I get a text message, because I am an atypical doctor again. I do give my cell phone out to certain patients, most of them, and I get a text message from the mom, call me, 911. I'm like, what the hell? Like, it took me back to the beeper days, phone number with 911. So I called her up, I'm like, what's going on? What's happening with Juju? And she said, no, I just wanted to share a story with you. I'm like, what's that? I was walking by his room, and I heard him laughing. I opened the door, and he's not in pain. He's enjoying life. His quality of life is better. And as a result of it, he was able to go to his brother's wedding, be the best man at his brother's wedding, and dance with his sister. So,
We hear and listen to all these stories is quite amazing and very inspirational to, keep us doing what we're doing. And, we all know that education about cannabis is incredibly important, incredibly important. Education and advocacy go hand in hand. Wouldn't you say?
I definitely agree with that. I just want to say thank you so much for sharing that story. That was beautiful. And Graciela is right. This is a very big part of this industry, advocacy. You had to be an advocate if you believed in this and wanted to actually treat people, do a business, a legitimate business. You had to be an advocate. You didn't have a choice. You had to hold picket signs. You had to sign petitions. You had to be in long, long meetings with the city and do things that you never thought you would ever or are even interested in doing, just to be part of this industry. And this is what you see today, where we're able to have these expos, these conferences, have and develop these organizations. The difference in the two, if you're looking at this more from a business perspective, which is fine, which is great, we're all about free enterprise, we're all about good businesses coming into the space, and all of us being as successful as we can be. That's why this association exists, is for all of us to support each other. You have a network, a support network system that you have available to you. But the advocacy is very important because you have two different tracks. You have the people that are looking at this as, oh, this is a quick way to get a quick buck and ride this wave. Your business will only last so long, especially if you're coming up against business owners that have and understand the value of what they're doing, the value of what you're doing for patients, the value of what you're doing for the market. Your business is not going to last. So coming from wearing the hat of being more on the business side of things, you're really not going to, if you go toe to toe, your business is not going to make it. So you might as well walk out the door. Don't even waste your time. It's very important to understand the roots of this industry, to be guided by those principles in order for your business to sustain itself and participate in the multi-billion-dollar profit that is available for anyone who's in the space. So just wanted to share that and why it's important to blend the two of business and also advocacy, and why maybe if you've participated in any of the other panels, you'll hear a lot of that, because these speakers were handpicked by the CBDIA, and that's the type of members and leaders that we are looking for in the space to continue to promote the right principles of, so those newcomers into the space have the right principles and foundations on how to build their business so that they can build those legacies for their families, or break away from things that maybe they hate doing and believe in this more, whatever your reasons are. If it's strictly just for enterprise, that's perfectly fine as well. But understanding this part of the industry, respecting this part of the industry, and also having the right relationships and connections in the industry are very integral to the success of your overall business in the cannabinoid space.
Absolutely.
And contrary to the line in Scarface, the great philosopher Tony Montana, Anybody know what that line was? Do not get high on your own supply. In this industry, you must get high on your own supply. So you understand what you're using and what you're getting and see how it works on you so that you know how it's going to work on the others. Because if you're in it, like she says, for the money, and you just slap your name or your face on a brand or on a label, but it's not organic, or there's pesticides, or there's heavy metals, or there's toxins, or there's shit products, and people get sick instead of getting better, now who's to blame? The people that created it or your face that's on there? You have to have a certain level of responsibility. So
That's right. That's absolutely right. You're responsible for everything that you put out there into the market and into the universe. So, you have to care, and that's one of the greatest things about this industry. It's a very socially conscious industry to be working in, which, it's obviously you still have your bad eggs everywhere, like in every single industry, but for the most part, you're really part of a very socially conscious movement, which this world needs more than ever now.
there was a question?
As well. So right after, no, go ahead. But we're going to open this up. So we've told you our stories. Now we want to hear yours and how we can help you.
My name is Carlos Romero, and I want to ask you, being an advocate of the law in Florida, what was the reaction after the state got together a law, and has it been really the correct law? Because because right now we are advocating for law in Costa Rica, and we want the law to be the law that had the law for the people. And so, what is your comment on that?
Well, do you know Raven
No.
Grospors in Costa Rica?
Yeah.
Okay. He invited me to Costa Rica early 2019, and I spoke. The police found out that I was there, and on the front page of one of the leftist newspapers said, "Gringo physician comes to push and promote marijuana in our country." And I've got the picture, so if anybody wants to see, if anybody questions it, I will show you the picture because it was on the front page of the newspaper with my picture. And they finally found out where I was, and they came and they searched. I know, as far as the law, the original question, the law in Florida, we advocated for Amendment 2. What we are under now is Senate Bill 8A and Senate Bill 182, which were signed into law by the governor, Rick Scott, who's now senator. Now, when the Amendment 2 came out, there included a portion in there about smoking. There included a portion there about growing, self-cultivation, None of that made it to the Senate bill because the way the law was written was, this is the amendment, but then you had 6 months for the state to implement and then 3 months for the law to be promulgated. So you're looking at 9 months. So the law passed in November of 2016, but it wasn't signed until June 23rd, 2017. Why do I know that date? Because it was the day before my birthday. And I said that Rick Scott gave me my birthday present, where I was able to recommend cannabis to more than just 4 diagnoses, which is what we had originally. So now we have 10 diagnoses, one of which is any chronic debilitating condition that's equal to or greater in severity than the ones named. So we have to be creative and work around the law, but it's not the original law that was put into place. And even though the law was signed on the 23rd of June, 2017, we didn't have smokable. Smokable was not allowed until the new governor came in, Ron DeSantis, and signed it into law March of 2019. So a year and a half later was when we actually got flower to be able to be used by our patients, which was part of the original law that I supported in writing. So
That's definitely a process. Anywhere.
And we wanna avoid that here in Texas and avoid it here in Costa Rica too.
I'd like to add to that as well. You know, it's definitely a process, but also I helped with the legislation in Argentina, in Colombia, Belize as well, and then you know here in the United States. I was the campaign field director for Proposition 19, which was the first initiative in California to tax and regulate it or make it legal. It's never perfect. You really don't have like this one solution. It also depends on what the residents of your state and your area needs, right? So it's a process, but like he mentioned, there's other aspects of the bill that were reintroduced and incorporated later, years later down the line. I think the main thing is if you're in an area that doesn't have any type of regulation, it's completely flat out illegal, the first step is really getting your foot in the door and passing something that you can at least have a framework to work through. So it's great that that conversation is happening. It's great that there's something, you know, on the table to even discuss. But that, every single state has their own way that they're structuring their regulations, and it's important because every state has residents that need different things, and it has to really work with so many other systems within the regulatory frame that it really has to be customized per state or per area or per country, and you can always still continue to fight. Like Graciela said, it's definitely a process to incorporate more and more. And a lot of it is trial and error as well. You know, you might find something that you want and then all of a sudden, it's not working out. So you want to have that amended, that part of the law amended, or you want to introduce something else. So it really is a process. There's not one country that has gotten it right on the first shot.
Or state.
Or state.
Or state, yeah.
Right. All right, we have another question.
This is for the doctor. I work for children with behavioral health challenges and behaviors, and I heard you mention 10 disorders that are on the law of what this. I wanted to know, because we use so many opioid-type medications to treat patients as young as 3 years old. Mm-hmm. Is there any research out there along the lines of the tolerance and independence as it relates to, instead of tolerance and independence, where you continue to make the child dependent on a medication to live? Is there more research out there about children and how to treat them, especially those with behavioral health disorders?
With cannabis?
Yeah.
Okay. My youngest patient is 18 months old, or has been 18 months old, and she had a stage 3 rhabdomyosarcoma. And there are a couple of pediatric hospitals in my area. There's one that's very pro-cannabis, and there's one that's very anti-cannabis. Well, fortunately, this child was in that hospital that was pro-cannabis. And in the wing, a few of the patients that were in that area were talking about medical cannabis and that I was the doctor. And so that's how they found me. And one of the diagnoses that's allowed in the state of Florida is cancer. Cancer has no age boundaries, so I get a lot of pediatric cancer patients. Also, epilepsy and seizures are another qualifying condition. And I have a lot of children that have Dravet syndrome, Lennox-Gastaut. These are children that have 200 to 300 seizures a day. And, we're diagnosed at 3-6 months of age. So we manage these children with cannabis. As far as research studies, much of the research that I rely on and depend on is what's been done in Israel. Dr. Aran, A-R-A-N, with autism. He started with a small pilot study with 60 subjects and then grew to another study with a little over 200 subjects with dosifying at 10 milligrams per kilo, and he's very well published and well known. And it was interesting because I was in Rome when I was able to travel last year, and the audience was full of people from all over the world, and I was speaking on autism, and I cited Dr. Aran's study, and there's a woman in the audience, and she's nodding back and forth. Well, being an experienced public speaker, I see somebody nodding, I'm going to jump on them and get some support. And it's like, I see you nodding, what's going on? Why? And she said, well, a few of my patients participated in that study. So boom, instant leverage. I'm like, well, get up here. Tell us about the experience of the study and with your children and everything else. So, there is one study that here in the United States they love to cite, and that is, if you give cannabis to an adolescent, you're predisposing them to schizophrenia in their early 20s. Okay. What they didn't take into consideration is the background of those children that participated in that study, what their family history was. None of that was discussed. Psychiatric conditions are, to a certain extent, there is a genetic composition. So there is some hereditary issues. That's why we always ask for past medical history. So that study was completely flawed and skewed, but you talk to any pediatrician and ask them, or as a parent, and speak to them and say, my child has seizures, rather than starting off with that, first response is, oh no, because if we do, by 20 they can become a schizophrenic. Bullshit. Exactly, because it is a gateway drug, where the reality is it's an exit drug. The first paper I published last year was a study I did, an observational study on at the time when she started, was a 45-year-old female that was taking 42 to 58 pills a day, not a month, not a week. Every day she took between 42 and 58 pills. Her life revolved around her alarm on her cell phone from when it was the next time to take her next dose of her medication. All she did was lay in bed, drool, and look at her crotch because she couldn't function because she was on long-acting opiates, short-acting opiates, anti-epileptic drugs. You add all that, and then you start to add all the other medications to offset the side effects of the medications that she was on. Opiate-induced constipation. What the hell is that? Just stop giving the opiate and they won't be constipated.
Thank you very much. I look forward to learning more.
So any other questions? All right. Well, we also touched base a little bit on Latin America, and just want to talk a little bit more about us. The CBDIA is a global organization. We do have representation in the UK and in Latin America, in the Netherlands, and so we're definitely growing our membership and our association because we do see that there is room for growth. And Priscilla could definitely talk about growth and growing your CBD business from the States, exporting and reaching over to Latin America. And maybe some of you guys might be interested in growing that way.
Yeah, definitely. So the market in Latin America, they are definitely heavy on the manufacturing side because there is a cost difference in manufacturing in, let's say Colombia and Mexico versus cultivating or manufacturing in Canada. The regulations really pad into your cost of manufacturing. So there's a really big advantage there, especially if you're able to match the quality that is required for products to be exported into other countries. So the exportation market, I think, is very strong from the United States into Asia is a really big market. A second one for exportation from U.S. into another international country would be the EU. The EU just recently went through some amazing regulatory changes, and a lot of target has been placed on the EU as far as their business, if exportation is part of your business model. So they just announced that CBD is not the equivalent of a Schedule I narcotic here in the United States. So it should be freely traded throughout all European countries. So that's a really, really exciting news for the market. It's a really great target to go after because they, although the whole entire world is targeting the European market, they still are looking to the U.S. and then some countries that have really great companies that have met like GMP standards, EU GMP standards. They're looking to import heavily from the EU. The Latin American market, I'd also say Brazil is one of those countries, although they recently just allowed for internal cultivation. Before it was just a strictly importation market. So they were heavily working with the United States because, again, the United States manufacturers are synonymous to quality and the standard, and also cutting-edge technology, especially when it comes to, medical delivery technology, things like that. Again, these products are a little bit more pharmaceutical or a little bit more medically sound than, let's say, the recreational or the retail market for like the tinctures and the gummies and so on and so forth. But there's still so much business to be done outside of the United States. If you want to grow your CBD business, especially targeting the
Anybody know what the legal THC amount is for an over-the-counter product in the United States? What? Say it? 0.3%. Do you agree or disagree? Agree, disagree, don't know? Okay. No, you're right. It's 0.3. It's 0.3%. But in the UK, it's 0.2%. In South America, it's 1%. So in the United States, if you have a crop and it goes past 0.3, because it's not a botanical definition, it's a government definition. The government has imposed this arbitrary percentage that says less than 0.3%, CBD, hemp, legal. Greater than 0.3%, marijuana, illegal, bad. The fact that it's coming from the hemp plant, it's not a botanical definition. So if you've got a crop and your product is greater than 0.3%, that's a hot product. You can't do crap with that in the United States. But you can certainly consider taking it across the border and taking it to those countries where it extends up to 1%.
How many people are in the CBD or cannabis industry currently? Own a business, own a service? Okay. And how many are looking to get into the industry? Okay, perfect. So does anybody have any questions? We're going to start to wrap this up because I have a good one. Okay, so knowing the audience, if you were to leave them with one piece of advice on the industry, what you know, being in here in the industry for however long both of you guys have been in, one piece of advice, and then also your prediction on the future of the industry.
Ladies first.
Alrighty then.
Hot seat.
I would say
I'm not a chauvinist, I'm just a gentleman.
I am good with both. You meet, you are going to, you have to be open to understanding that part of this industry, because it really is when things get hard, because this is a real business. This is, you're going to have your ups and downs. You're going to face every single challenge as if you were going to open a McDonald's or a clothing store or any type of business. You're going to have the same exact challenges. The statistics are that most small businesses fail within the first 3 years. So you are going to have challenges, but the thing that really, really pulls you through is understanding what you're working for, why you're doing it, and understand that you are actually making a positive impact, that you are actually making a huge difference, especially if you set your business up with the right principles right from the beginning. So that type of stuff, like stories like what the doctor shared earlier, that really pulls you through in like your darkest moments, which is essential, especially if you're just getting started in the industry, right? You're unsure, you're in uncharted territories, and you need. What was the second part of the question? Pregnancy
The
brain.
future.
The future.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where do you see the future of the industry?
Because I have and am looking through a lot of the lens of genetics, because my one of my companies is a cannabis genetic or a cannabinoid genetics company. The future that I see is a lot of things aren't really focused. I mean, it's a part of the conversation now. Starting to anyway, the conversation of genetics. Genetics is, where you're actually even getting the medicine from. What is it hemp or is it cannabis? Do you understand the difference between the two? What are the other cannabinoids present within the plant? What are the terpenoids? What are the flavonoids? What are the other cannabinoids that are there that make this plant unique to what it is? So understanding that is really only as good as your starting material, and so on and so on and so on. So where I see a lot of the future heading, which hasn't really been touched on yet, is the development of cannabis genetics. That also includes hemp and CBD genetics. A lot of the science and technology that is going to be applied to that, to where we can arrive, hopefully, to a point where we're matching, the right type of genetics to treat very specific illnesses, and matching that even further to the right set of human DNA that it would respond best to. So obviously that's a very, those are really broad strokes, but that's the end goal of what I would see, starting from the lens and point of view of genetics, of cannabis genetics.
My thing is education. The word physician means teacher, and I'll share a story. We have multiple dispensaries in the state of Florida because it is a medically legal state, and the CEO to many of the dispensaries are my patients. And one individual in particular came to the office because he wanted to get his medical cannabis card, because he is a CEO and didn't have his medical cannabis card in the state of Florida. And so his employees and his partners were like, how could you be in the industry and not have a medical cannabis card? Like, you're not even using your product, as I mentioned earlier. You want to get high on your own supply. You want to know what you're selling and what you're using. So he comes in, he sees my partner, and the law in the state says that every 210 days you have to have a face-to-face encounter to renew your orders. So he sees my partner, she gives him the recommendations, gives him the education, we're all set. His follow-up appointment is with me, because I typically do the follow-ups because of all the traveling I do and all the lecturing and book promotions that I do, because I published a book last year. I'm very busy, I'm hardly ever in the office, but I do follow-up visits just to deal with the challenging cases, whatever. So this guy comes in, he's got his appointment for follow-up, and so I read her note, and I'm like, okay, on your previous visit, Dr. Gunn recommended this, this, and this, and explained to you to use this, this, and this. All of his products didn't cross product lines, didn't send them to a different dispensary, said, based on your products, these are the products that I would recommend you use. So I go, okay, so how did the Iran al-Mal go for your sleep? Or how did the Alaska go for your day, you know, because you're feeling tired and you've got some depression going on? How's it working? And he's like, well, I haven't used anything. And I'm like, for 6.5 months, you've had a card and you haven't used anything? He's like, no. I'm like, why not? He's like, I don't want to get high. Oh. I'm like, dude, being medicated and incapacitated are two totally different things. So what should have been a 10-minute office visit became a 35-minute conversation, me encouraging the owner of the company to use his own products. And like, have you never seen that commercial, you know, for the bald guy says, I'm not only the president, I'm also the customer. You know, he was the first customer, because if he's going to promote hair growth and he's bald, how the hell are you going to sell anything?
I really trust him.
Exactly. So I'm telling this guy, how are your employees, how are your stakeholders going to trust you when you have a medical cannabis card and you're not using your own product line? It's like, I'm not sending you to the guys across the street from you. I'm sending you to your own stuff. So educate yourself on the products, educate yourself on the industry, because it's, even though it is a business and it's like a franchise, but there's so many nuances and so many different things that can go wrong. If you're growing in Florida versus growing in Colorado versus growing in Mexico versus growing in Colombia, you know, or Argentina. Argentina is the southernmost tip of South America, and Colombia is on the northernmost tip. Completely different climate, completely different scenario. So these are little things that are important for you to understand. As far as the future, people are still scared shitless of THC. So take advantage of that and use it to your advantage and push and promote the CBD, which is legal thanks to Farm Bill 2018. Use that to your advantage, because people are going to be more apt to move in your direction of the CBD world as opposed to my world, which is medical cannabis, where I am recommending the whole plant for all uses. And you don't have the same restrictions that the THC world has. So take advantage of that.
Thank you so much. Very, very useful information. And I also want to note that our website is cbdindustryassociation.org. We also have a listing of all of our board of advisors, both in the States and in Latin America. And I definitely encourage you to chat them up. You know, they're here, they're free, they're available.
I will speak for drinks.
There you go.
Or
There
vape
you
pens.
And please feel free to reach out to us at the CBD Association through our website. Help you in any way, shape, or form. So thank you guys for being here, and thank you to our panelists.